So yeah, let's get started. I'm just going to share my
Perfect.
screen here so you all can see what we have to share today. So, hey, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, no matter where you are in the world. We know that giving this time is always it's a bit of an ask, so we do appreciate your spending some time with us today. We have something that we're excited about, and we're lucky to have Jeremiah with us to talk about what every marketer needs to know about zero-party data. And I think this is really an exciting topic. There's a lot to understand and learn here, and I think hopefully you have some takeaways for how you can impact your online store, your operations, and the marketing activities that you're doing. So without further ado, I'll just hop into it. Our agenda today, so we'll handle some quick introductions. We're going to do a brief explainer of what zero-party data is. From there, why post-purchase surveys matter and why they're an effective way to gather that zero-party data. And specifically, what are checkout reviews, which is a stamped feature that really kind of dovetails nicely into what KnoCommerce offers in their zero-party data solution. And then how does our integration work? Just so you all know, in case you've got someone, a friend or a colleague who missed this, or you want to go back and look at anything today, we are going to record this session, and we will be providing a link to the recording at the end of it. I'm Kyle Bennett. I'm the Director of Sales at Stamped. I've been with Stamped for just about 2 years. And again, lucky to have with us today, Jeremiah Prummer, pardon me, CEO of KnoCommerce.
Yeah.
So Jeremiah, I'll turn it over to,
Okay.
well, I'll let you introduce what KnoCommerce is, and then I'll introduce Stamped and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Kyle, and the whole Stamped team for having me. Yeah, love Stamped. You all are a great partner, and really looking forward to just chatting with you all a little bit about zero-party data and what it means, how to use it, all of that good stuff. So we do surveys primarily for e-commerce brands. It's usually going to be on an order confirmation screen. We can email surveys, post a link, embed it in a page as well. But most of the time we're showing a survey on an order confirmation screen. And the goal is to help you get data from your customers that then helps you power marketing attribution, personalization, conversion rate optimization, all of those good things. So that's what we do. We have been at it for a few years now. We collect a few million data points every month for our customers, and I've got a little bit of specific insight that I'll be able to share with you all too that I think will be kind of interesting and hopefully gives you a little bit of inspiration for what you can do for your own brand.
Amazing. Thanks, Jeremiah. And oops, wrong direction there. Stamped, we are a solution to power your reviews and loyalty. So we've been around since 2016. We were merchant founded. We've got thousands of customers using our reviews and our loyalty solutions. We're really a platform designed to increase your conversions and your average order value. And we do that with this kind of two sides of the coin approach between reviews and loyalty. So the two experiences are integrated with each other. We can create compelling reward opportunities for your customers so that when they leave reviews, they can keep coming back, they can access those rewards. And again, our goal here is to increase your conversions and your average order values. So from there, I'm just gonna turn it over to Jeremiah. I'll stop sharing and hand you the keys to go over what zero-party data is.
Perfect. That sounds good. All right, I'll share my screen here real quick. We'll dive into a couple things here. All right. All right, everybody see my screen? Got the zero-party data slide here. Okay, so real quick, very, very high level. If you want to boil zero-party data down into a single idea, it's essentially when somebody shares data with you knowing that they're sharing the data. So the difference between that and first-party data is that somebody can come to your website and you can collect click data, you can collect IP address, you can collect usage of your product, that kind of information from a customer, and that is very much first-party data. But zero-party data is really when somebody tells you something or gives you some information that they know they're filling out, right? So that's answering a survey, taking a quiz, leaving a review. Those are examples of zero-party data. So with this move from a world in which marketers just kind of took whatever data they wanted to And there was a lot of, especially like the third-party pixels that allowed you to track data across multiple websites and all of that good stuff. We've moved now into and are continuing to move into a little bit more of a privacy-focused world. And so with that, zero-party data becomes very important because you need consent and you need to be able to collect data from your customers in a way that doesn't require essentially scraping information, right? So and just kind of getting into why it matters, it's again going to be given with explicit consent. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're always telling somebody exactly what you're doing with that information, but somebody knows that if they fill out a survey or they take a quiz or they leave a review, that information is something that they're giving to you and that you could use it. And so that consent piece is really important when we talk about why zero-party data matters. Another really interesting thing too is that it captures a person's perception of reality. So perception and reality are not always the same, but it at least gives you an idea of how somebody feels about something, what they're thinking about it, what they remember, and that is going to be really useful information as well. A really good example of this is asking somebody a question, and this is literally the most common question on our platform. How did you first hear about us? They may have seen an ad 3 years ago on Facebook that they don't remember, but if they tell you that they remember discovering you on TikTok, that's a really important data point, and you want to be capturing that kind of information. So the reality is that a customer has multiple touch points along their journey with a brand, and so being able to get that data point from the perspective of that customer is going to be really important information. And then the last piece that I think is really important with zero-party data, and a good reason why you should be collecting it, is that it's a unique view of data that goes beyond what the internet can see. So at the end of the day, the internet is limited by browsers, it's limited by devices. So if I am looking for a product on my phone and then I switch and I buy it on my computer, that is lost data. You don't know necessarily that it's the same person looking at that information, right? And then there's also a time component. Over time, cookies get cleared, devices get changed, people talk to friends and family members about things. They walk into a coffee shop and see your product on a shelf. Like, you don't know what's happening offline, and zero-party data can help bridge that gap and give you a little bit more insight into what it is that happens outside of a web browser or an app. And so what I'm going to talk about specifically today is really post-purchase surveys. And this is, again, like the primary use case of our product. I would say 90% or more of the survey responses that we collect come in through a post-purchase survey. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do with that. And then again, we'll walk through a couple of specific examples. So post-purchase surveys are very, very good at a few things. So one, helping with marketing attribution. Again, there's a gap in the data, and there's things that happen on the internet across multiple devices and things that happen off of the internet that impact a buying journey. And so being able to ask customers questions around marketing attribution is really, really important. And I'll actually show this to you in a moment, but asking more than one question is also really important. So go deeper than just asking somebody, how did you hear about us, if that's your goal, to understand marketing attribution. Dive into things like understanding first touch, understand last touch, understand how long it took them to buy. All of those things are things that you can do with zero-party data in a way that you just can't looking at browser and app data by itself. So that's one really important use of post-purchase surveys. And frankly, probably the most common use across the entire ecosystem. And then buying motivation is really, really powerful as well. So, and this kind of fits in with conversion rate optimization as well. But what is it that's making somebody buy? What's convincing them to buy? And I've got a great example of this in a moment as well that covers how this looks with reviews. But you can really use survey data to ask the kinds of questions like, why did you choose to buy our product instead of a competitor's? What was it that made you buy our product today? What's the list a few value propositions about your product and try to understand which of those things drove a purchase. So that kind of stuff is really, really powerful, both in optimizing your website, optimizing your ads, and even optimizing your offer and the products that you're selling to your customers. And then customer profiling and segmentation is another great use of post-purchase surveys. We see, so we collect about 3 million questions a month through our system. 45% average response rate is what we see on an order confirmation screen survey. So in that context, a lot of customers are going to fill out a survey. And a lot of customers will answer a lot of questions. So it's also a really good point in the customer journey to collect specific information about a customer. A really fun example of this, there's a pet brand we work with. They ask for questions like, what is your pet's name? How many pets do you have? What are their names? And then they feed that data into Klaviyo, and then they use that profile data for better email messaging. They collect birthday of the pet as well. So sending the pet a gift on their birthday, those kinds of things can be done with a post-purchase survey. And because the completion rates and the response rates are so high on those, it's probably the best way of actually collecting that personalization data on a person who has purchased a product from you. There's other ways that you can do it in terms of email sign up stuff from people that haven't purchased, but for actual purchasers, it's probably the best way to collect that data. And then just kind of real quick on, I've already touched on this a little bit, but post-purchase surveys have very high response rates. Again, typically close to half of customers will fill it out. I've seen upwards of 80% before. A post-purchase interaction is a very high intent interaction. So there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of collecting data, but then also driving behavior with the data. And that's something that we'll actually show you a little bit in a moment as well. In the example of Stamped and KnoCommerce, it's more about collecting additional data and leveraging this high intent location. But we actually can do things like drive app downloads and drive refer a friend shares and all kinds of really cool stuff where you're capturing information and then you're using that information to push somebody to do something. So this is a really, really great location to be collecting data. Real quick, you can kind of see this. I'll actually go through this a little bit more too. On the side here, you can see what it looks like to actually deliver a survey. But just to kind of reiterate, it's just a great place to be collecting information and to help you better understand your buyer's journey from the customer's perspective. This is a great example of how you can actually use a survey to track the impact of reviews. So this is a brand we work with. They run a survey for a lot of different things. But one of the questions that they have is literally just a free-form question that somebody can type a response into. And they ask, what is the main reason you chose to shop with us versus another competitor? And here you'll see there's a lot of different ways that people have typed this in. If we actually do a text matching aggregate and create what we call an audience in our platform, we see that 23% of people said reviews, or some form of reviews, right? Good reviews, the reviews, however you phrase it, reviews was the #1 reason for them making their purchase. And what's really cool too is you can actually start to see things like AOV by response. So for people who said reviews, it was typically over $100 AOV. For people that specified price or weight loss, it was under $100. It's closer to like an $80 to $85 average. So that's really valuable information to be able to have when you are trying to understand what is it that's motivating somebody, what is it that's driving the purchase. And the fact that reviews is such a massive such a massive driver of purchases, but two, a massive driver of high AOV. That's a really important data point to have. And obviously this brand is doing really well with reviews. Oh, and okay, sorry, Kyle, before we hop into that, I'm gonna go ahead and show real quick a quick demo here as well. There was one other thing that I wanted to walk through and just talk through attribution specifically. So this is the #1 reason people work with us is they're looking for marketing attribution. And I wanted to show you a little bit of how this actually works in terms of the way that you should be asking questions and the type of data that you can actually get out of this. So here's an example of an attribution survey. And here we're asking, how did you first hear about us? And again, we're looking at, this is all about the customer's perspective. And this is really why Zero Party is so interesting. and such a valuable thing to be collecting. So we're asking, how did you first hear about us? They're going to give you the answer that they remember. So I'm just going to select TikTok in this case. And then we can ask things like who posted about us. This just helps you kind of get at the difference between like organic or paid ads. So I'm just going to grab one of these real quick. And then we can even ask who posted about us or who was it if they say that they discovered your brand through an influencer. So just like I was showing you in the previous example, you can have somebody type in a response. So I'll just say, let's say Kyle told me about this brand. So I'll just go ahead and drop that in there. And so what you can actually start to do with that is see specifically what influencers, what people are driving really high level engagement with your brand, and what of that is leading to sales. So like a lot of people track influencer marketing with promo codes. What we see is often a 3 to 10 times increase in attribution if you let people type in a response to an influencer, and then extrapolate that out to look at the total purchases of a brand. So there's some really cool data that you can collect there. And again, it's all about the customer's perception. So the reality of this journey is that they've probably seen multiple ads. They've probably had multiple interactions with your brand, especially if an influencer posted and they saw you on TikTok from an influencer. They probably also have experienced ads from your brand. But what we're looking for is really that first, that touch point that they remember, right? And then here we're looking at what brought you to our site today. So trying to understand what is the action that actually drove a purchase. And somebody might say that they received an email. They might say they saw an ad. But again, we're looking at what is it that drove that purchase and that final interaction. And then I'm just going to grab one of these real quick. And then this last question is really, really cool and really important as well. So how long did you know about us before making your first purchase? This again is looking at the customer's perception. You're trying to understand the length of time from discovery to purchase. So I'm not going to go through the rest of this. I just want to show you a little bit of what this looks like and why this matters. So if we ask somebody, how did you first hear about us? Actually, I'll show that to you real quick. So here you can see these like high level discovery channels, as we like to call them. So for this brand specifically, 16% Instagram, 13% TikTok, 46% from friend, family member, or coworker. They have a lot of people coming from word of mouth, right? So this is all really interesting data and important data to have. But where it gets really cool is when you start to take all these different pieces of zero-party data and you start to overlay them. So this is, if you are in the world of paid ads and marketing, you're basically making ad buying decisions off of a 7-day window of data, right? So you are saying, here's the dollars we spent, here's the impact we saw over 7 days, and we are making ad buying decisions on a, we're looking to get 1.5 times the for every dollar we put in, we're trying to get $1.50 back out in terms of revenue over that 7-day time frame. Where this gets fascinating, though, is when we actually build what we call audiences based off of data. So here we're going to say, I want to look at people who said they found us on Google. Those people, almost all of them actually purchase within a week. They purchase very quickly. TikTok, on the other hand, is like completely the opposite. So almost everybody takes more than a month to make their first purchase. And if I were to toggle this, I think we'd see it's probably under 20%. Yeah, about 15% are saying that they actually bought within that first week. So what this means is that you can actually take a look at this data and say, okay, we know that if you ask somebody how long it took to make their first purchase and where they heard about us and they came from TikTok, it's going to take them a really long time to make that purchase. So maybe our ad revenue doesn't look great in that first 7 days, but we're actually going to have a really good long-term impact with that ad revenue. And so for every dollar we get back now in that first 7 days, it might be $4, $5, $6 that comes back over the next year. So that's really the benefit of attribution in the context of collecting zero-party data around that. And this is, again, why you want to be collecting a ton of different data points. And so some of the data is going to be really focused on things like attribution, where you're trying to understand the impact at scale. Other pieces are going to be focused on personalization. But I think this is just kind of a good breakdown of how this looks in terms of the benefit of data at scale and being able to use multiple zero-party data points and connect the dots between them. All right, back to you, Kyle.
Thank you so much. And that's, I think, some incredible results and sort of understanding that you can gain from something that just kind of seems so simple, right? And to customers, really almost, I think, kind of feels effortless. You know, one of the things that stood out to me, of course, was a high response rate, which is, I think, it speaks to the power of immediacy
Yes.
in that kind of conversation with customers. And so with that, you know, how do we power that immediacy with Stamped? Well, checkout reviews is really kind of the way to do this. So this is available on some of our Stamped plans for the reviews application. And really, as Jeremiah alluded to, it's about capturing that snapshot, that kind of emotion in the moment where someone's bought something, they're having maybe that first or second relationship with your brand, and they're excited, right? It gives you an opportunity to gain visibility into that decision, why they're here, and of course, with No Commerce, make some informed decisions with it, and then also an opportunity to increase UGC that you might be building to showcase on your own site. And we really look at the data that you get through checkout reviews, or also just product reviews in general. That's kind of your intellectual property or your content, and you get that chance to syndicate it into all kinds of other channels, whether it's your marketing materials, your own site, perhaps it's utilizing that in some of your ad spend or Google Shopping. So really, you can collect a lot of rich data, rich feedback from customers, and checkout reviews is a powerful way to do that. And then I think you can see now where it's maybe the beginning of that enriched customer data profile based on zero-party data. So what does it look like on the Stamped side? Well, we're kind of that final question in that No Commerce post-purchase survey. So you can see from the example that's kind of playing, gives a customer opportunity to leave feedback on a per product basis at the end of that survey, and just gain even kind of more granular information about what brought them here. Why did they buy those particular products? Maybe you want to understand why they bought them together. So all kinds of use cases where you can have this really simple addition through checkout reviews, just kind of even flesh out this picture a bit more. So it's about optimizing that post-purchase survey with Stamped and giving additional kind of information to get more marketing performance out of your No Commerce installs. The integration, like I mentioned, it's embedded at that final step. And really what's involved, if you're a Stamped customer already and you're thinking about getting started with No Commerce, maybe you've got checkout reviews happening already, or you're looking at enable them. You need to have a paid Stamped subscription, obviously, also a paid No Commerce subscription. Once you get those checkout reviews set up, and our advocates team is wonderful at helping you with that, you just reach out to No Commerce's support team, and they make that final kind of integration between the two platforms. So I think a very simple feature on the Stamped side, or it seems simple, but what you can get out of it is so much more, and really exciting stuff. I think the integration, we've already shown that customers really respond well to reviews, and Stamped Reviews does such a great job of showcasing those reviews in an easy to find, easy to search way for your customers so that we can increase conversion. And now with No Commerce, we can get that attribution and make those informed decisions about how we're handling our marketing spend. So as Jeremiah alluded to, 45% of orders complete a post-purchase survey, which is incredible. And for our customers who are using Stamped checkout reviews, 33% of them leave at least one checkout review for a product that they're buying. So imagine if you are completing sort of 1,000 orders a month, you could expect up to 150 reviews and kind of zero-party data profiles built for new purchases. And I think that's pretty exciting. I don't know of any other way that you could kind of build such a rich picture of your customers so quickly and so readily. So I'd like to just take a pause there and let you all know that we've seen a couple questions in the chat, and we'd love to get to that and start answering some questions. I'm going to give you all some time to think about what questions you might want to ask myself or Jeremiah about No Commerce, about Stamped. But Jeremiah, I've actually got a question for you to start us off, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
I've heard you talk a number of times about the kind of changing landscape in the ad buying space. Like
Yeah.
the prices are obviously going up, especially on say Facebook or Instagram, and yet the efficiency's kind of gone down. I'm wondering if you can sort of paint that picture for us a little bit and then help us understand where no commerce helps solve for that problem.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest impact has just really been, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about supply and demand, right? So there's a lot of people advertising, that drives the prices up. And so I think the struggle though for brands has been to understand what channels are effective for them, what ones aren't. And I think a lot of what we see is, let me break down what we look at in terms of like an ad channel. So we talk about ad channels in terms of discovery and purchase driving channels. And I didn't really dive into that too much in that example that I gave, but something like a TikTok is a really TikTok or YouTube actually are two channels that are really, really good top level discovery channels. Something like Google is really good at driving a purchase. Something like Meta or Facebook, Instagram is a little bit in between. It could do a little bit of both, right? And what you see there is that ultimately, I'll go back to actually the exact example I was showing earlier. That is a brand that sells baby products. And so let's say you are browsing on TikTok and you're 3 months pregnant, and you're actually the right target for that ad, but you don't necessarily need a 6-month-old onesie yet that you saw on TikTok. And you're in entertainment mode when you see that ad. So you're just browsing, you're not really looking to buy, you're not looking to solve a specific problem. On the opposite side of that, let's say you are looking for a onesie for a 6-month-old and you're searching on Google, you already know what you want. You're already trying to solve a problem. All you're looking for at that point is the right product or the right brand to fill that need. And those are two very different buying experiences. And so I think part of what we see in the landscape right now is that it's become really hard for those platforms to track that over time. So Meta used to be able to look at your customer browsing information, looking at all the different sites they're looking at. Like there was just a lot more data that they could rely on. And so there is kind of a difference in just the way that the platforms are able to serve ads. And I think that they've actually done a pretty good job of adapting to the new ecosystem. The harder part is understanding how well these ads are actually working. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. And so where we really try to fit in is trying to show the channel level impact and really help brands understand that there is a difference in the way you should be thinking about different channels, and that will have some impact on how you spend money on those channels. And so if TikTok isn't driving a lot of clicks to your website and a lot of purchases, but you are seeing a lot of people buying and saying that they found your brand on a survey, then that gives you some insight in a different way than you would have based off of like a Google Analytics or a platform like a Triple Whale or a Northbeam that's giving you more like click oriented data. So I don't know if that fully answers the question. There's so many different pieces of nuance, but I feel like that's how we really try to fit into it is helping provide more insight on that side of things. Oh, I think you're muted.
That really helps paint the picture of attribution and the nuances of different platforms. And as someone who not that long ago had a partner who was browsing TikTok and getting targeted baby ads, I feel a certain affinity to that example. So
I'm right there right now. So yeah.
It's a wonderful world that way, isn't it? Just a quick question from Russ here in the chat, and folks, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll answer them as we can. Russ's question: is it safe to say that first-party data are basically the clicks and other things that you can see from, say, Google Analytics?
Yeah. Yes. The definitions are a little bit blurry, right? I think you can look at first-party data in terms of that for sure. Technically, first-party data is owned data. Zero-party data is really just a subset of first-party data. The differentiation is that it's a customer knows that they're giving it to you. I think is probably the best way to describe it. So yeah, that's totally correct though. It's click data. It's it's things like your purchase data and your website, like all of that is first party data.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for painting that picture. I've got another one for you while we wait on a couple more questions. I've heard you mention a little bit about how online specific or e-commerce brands sometimes struggle to really know their customers. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about why that is, and again, what some of the solutions that we can utilize are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I like to so I grew up in a small my parents owned a health food store in a small town. So like the difference between that and selling online is pretty dramatic, in that when you are in a space like that, somebody walks through the door, you know who they are, you know things about them, you know what they look like, you know what kind of car they drive. You might know things about who their family is, what kind of products they buy, why they buy them. All of that is something that is just really easy and obvious to know because you have 200 customers, right? Or maybe it's 1,000 customers. But you're actually interacting with somebody face to face. It's a very different experience when you're selling something to somebody who you can't see, have never talked to, and they're just basically a number and maybe a name on a website, right? But ultimately, it's pretty meaningless. And so I think one of the things that gets really interesting with zero party data is just trying to better understand who those people are. Right now, in the context of our platform, that looks like you deciding and maybe collaborating with us to decide what types of questions to ask to help you unlock that sort of insight. Longer term, we're trying to make that easier. We have templates on surveys, but you saw a little bit of this, but this idea of like being able to build audiences based off of data. So you can start to connect the dots between different groups of people. But yeah, it's the reality is that like one-to-one, knowing who a customer is and understanding them is extremely difficult without actually talking to somebody and having an actual relationship. But I do think that you can use zero-party data to really start to understand demographics level data and psychographics, like what is it that motivates my customers and pushes them to buy with us. We do a lot of work with food and beverage brands. And that's a really interesting one because you have people buying constantly. And so if somebody's buying once a month, you can really start to build profiles around who those people are over time as you have more and more touch points with that customer and ability to kind of build a set of data based off of previous data collected.
Yeah, thanks for filling that out. I mean, really, when I started in my sales career, it was really about that relationship sell, right? And almost to the example with your folks in the health food store, it really feels like a way that we can take that online and actually have almost a personal relationship where customers wouldn't really expect that from a brand when they're used to that anonymity and that kind of I'm just a number here. I think that really can create a unique experience. A question from one of our attendees. What does your data look like when it gets integrated into Stamped?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as of this moment, we don't have a direct data integration into Stamped. It's mostly about the what we call actions. So driving behavior, so driving checkout reviews. The other thing you could do if you want to is set something up to push somebody to a loyalty program. So if you have a page on your website that talks about loyalty and opting somebody into that, that's a really powerful way to connect to. I don't have any specifics about long-term data, but I do know that that's something we ultimately want to try to do, where you can leverage some of that data in the context of Stamped, but nothing currently is available for that.
Yeah, I actually, hearing you talk about the pet brand that uses the pet's birthday as a sort of moment of celebration and thinking about how our loyalty product kind of works. I think when you add something like Klaviyo on top of this and you start getting rich data from KnoCommerce about your customers and incredible data from Stamped Loyalty about the rewards or the points that they've accrued and maybe some of the things that they can redeem and kind of come back for, you could really build some compelling campaigns through something like Klaviyo that make a personal outreach about driving kind of loyalty based outcomes. And just hearing that, I mean, we obviously celebrate birthdays and can reward points on birthdays, but how much of a surprise and delight would it be to instead celebrate a pet's birthday in that kind of situation? But there isn't a direct data integration right now, but I think if you add that additional layer
Yeah.
You could make some really compelling use cases in terms of re-engagement campaigns, people who haven't come to shop in a while but have like an accrued point balance, and then you've got that better data about why they started shopping with you in the first place. So some cool stuff you could probably do there.
Yeah, Kyle, that's a really good point. Being you can take the two platforms and essentially connect them in terms of how they're used in the context of Klaviyo, just through profile attributes and all those different data points that exist within Klaviyo currently.
Yeah, and I should point out you can get a lot of that data from stamped reviews as well. So, I mean, you could really build some hyper-specific audiences based on the information that you're collecting, have they actually participated and given like a product review or an NPS survey. So I think the possibilities are actually kind of endless. My mind's spinning a little bit just thinking about it right now. Great question. Thanks so much. I have one more for you here while we maybe wait on another question from the audience. This one's a little bit more tactical, but I heard you talk about sort of this number of questions you could ask, and just wondering what makes for an effective question or question type in a post-purchase survey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in our platform, we have 12 different question types that somebody can use. Radio questions, which are essentially multiple choice, but a single response allowed per question. Checkboxes, which is multiple choice, but multiple questions allowed. So there's birthday or dates rather, rankings. There's so many different things you can do, but if your goal really is to get as many people to answer as possible, there's kind of a few tricks to it. So one, use something like a radio question where it's a single response that somebody makes, but it's multiple choice. So really easy for them to browse through the options, click an option, and it saves it for them. So super fast and easy to do. So that's one piece of it, is the question type itself. Another piece is the type of question you ask. So if you jump right into asking things like age and gender and household income, people are less likely to fill out that survey. You're going to see fewer people answering it. This is actually part of the reason why we recommend the attribution question. It's very it doesn't feel invasive, right? It's a really good way to start out a survey. And so with that, we typically see about half of people answering that question if you start with that question. And sometimes it can be a whole lot higher than that. And then the other tip, two other things. One, placement. So the higher up the page a survey is on a confirmation screen, the more likely somebody is to fill it out. And then the other thing is just make it feel friendly and conversational as much as possible. So I think you probably would have seen this on the example, but instead of just asking, how did you first hear about us? Say, hey, before you go, how did you first hear about us? Or after somebody's answered that, say thank you, and then ask them another question, right? There's ways that you can walk them through it where it feels like it's just a friendlier, more inviting experience than just having the question itself. So those are kind of the tips that we have in terms of like getting people to fill it out. But the one last thing I would say is it also is about what data is important to you. So you just need to kind of keep in mind, like, what is it you're trying to achieve? What are the questions you need to ask to achieve that, and prioritize it with that in mind as well. So lots of different factors, but I think if you kind of look at it holistically, it kind of makes it clear which things you want to be focused on and asking first.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And certainly one of the things that stood out there, I think, and we see this in terms of like the different kind of customer rewards that maybe a brand offers for loyalty. Like it really needs to match your voice as a brand. And so if you're like a fun kind of, carefree brand, you want to have that in your review requests, and you want to have that in your loyalty as well as your kind of first party data or zero party data surveys, post-purchase surveys, because otherwise it's just kind of, it doesn't feel authentic to the experience that's brought someone to your site, right? So
yeah,
I appreciate that call out. Well, folks, I'll give everyone another chance here to maybe pop a question to. Oh, perfect. One from David. So how do you use Stamped.io to acquire information about or around customer psychographics rather than just demographic information? Do you have any tips how we can use Stamped to learn who our ideal customer is? So I think maybe this is kind of like a two-part one. Stamped can certainly help you gain a lot of like product review, and then through our integration with Know, these moments in times, the kind of emotional snapshots of a customer through something like a checkout review. But in terms of that psychographic, that deeper picture, I think, Jeremiah, that's where our integration comes in with you. And maybe you want to build on
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely help with that. In terms of we have pre-built questions around those things. We also just have a team that's here to help, and we like to be very hands-on with our clients. So yeah, I don't know that. And then in terms of like being able to use that with stamp data, I think to your point, Kyle, the best way to do that is going to be pushing both those into Klaviyo, building audiences, and doing some stuff there. But yeah, we definitely, that is like what we do. Definitely in our wheelhouse.
And just to layer on to that, there are a few stamp features that maybe aren't quite part of our integration that sort of can help fill out that picture. I don't think would replace what we're talking about here, but certainly there's sentiment analysis in our reviews to kind of understand on a natural language basis, like what is the tone that the customer is communicating with. Like sometimes you have customers who leave like a 5-star review but have a negative sentiment in there, and it's an opportunity to reach out to them and really kind of have another touch point. As well, Stamps Pro plans have NPS surveying built in, which I think is a very good way of understanding, in addition to what we see in Know Commerce, kind of the impact of that friends and family sharing your brand with their friends and family, right? And we know that word of mouth is such an effective and inexpensive way to drive people back to the products and services that you're offering. That was a great question, David. Thank you.
Yeah. It looks like we got one from Paul too. I can take this one. So besides checkout surveys, does Know Commerce enable the creation of surveys for external channels like Facebook, Instagram, or a newsletter? And the answer to that is yes. So we do have the ability to send surveys with a link or embed them on a page that's not the order confirmation screen. So one thing that's really nice with that is, let's say you are sending a survey from Klaviyo, you can actually pass the email address automatically pass it through the URL. It ties it to your customer data if they are a customer. And then when you actually go in and analyze that data, download the data, it will actually be associated with a customer record, and you can see things like historical orders, location data for that customer, all of that kind of stuff. It really depends on how you want to use it, but that is a really nice feature. Another thing that I love with those types of surveys is we do have an incentive ability with Shopify specifically, where we can create one-time use promo codes. So we actually have a brand we work with. They sent out a survey to their customer base. It was 55 questions long, massive survey. And they generated over $100,000 in revenue from the promo codes after somebody completed that survey. So it was like a 20% off promo code. They collected data from 2,000 plus customers and generated a bunch of revenue from it as well. So it was, and then they actually used that data to raise money. So it was kind of it was like a 3-part win for them. So really awesome and pretty easy to set up. On our, again, we're really big on customer service. So we're happy to help with that whole setup and process from our side too.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for that question, Paul. Just yeah, an opportunity for anyone else to drop a question into the chat or into the Q&A. We'd love to answer those for you while we just have a little bit more time. I have to say, like, while we're maybe waiting on another question, this is exciting to me. I think this just fills gaps in what I hear from merchant experiences, on a day-to-day basis when we're talking to people about the challenges they have or the business goals they're trying to solve. And so, this is exciting. I hope you all are excited by it. I certainly felt that this sort of hour of my time today was well worth it.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I was just saying, yeah, thanks, Kyle. And I'm a big fan of Stamped, and I think the interaction and the things that you can do together we already have some cool ways of working together. I think we're going to expand on that and do a lot more over time as well. And there's just a ton of potential for collecting, like reviews, loyalty, and surveys as a combination is one of the most powerful. It is basically, it's almost every piece of zero party data that you can collect at scale can come through those three sources. And so there's a lot of really cool things that can be done there. And I think like if anybody's interested to, just from a strategy standpoint, we'd love to collaborate with you and just like talk through like, how do you actually do this for your brand? And really help you build out that strategy that goes beyond just like installing an app and clicking a few buttons, right?
Yeah, actually, that's maybe a great question here is, if someone's interested in KnoCommerce, Jeremiah, what's the next step for them?
Yeah. So I'm sure there's probably a link on the email that you got with us. Come to our website, send us a chat message, email us at hello@knowcommerce.com. And yeah, we'll work with you. We do have, if you really are interested in the strategy standpoint, our pro plan that we offer is $249 a month and includes a Slack channel. So that's a really popular offering, especially with brands that are doing $1 million a year or more in revenue. Just because we do really become that strategist with you, helping you in terms of best practices. And so that's a really good option for working with us. But at the same time, you can literally also just go and install our app. It's not that big of a deal. Typically it takes 5 to 10 minutes to set up, and we have a lot of pre-built surveys. So yeah, it's really easy to get going. And then if you do want to dive deeper, we love to be able to do that with you.
Yeah, we would also love to do that with you. I think we've got a number of Stamped customers here in the group today. So thank you for choosing Stamped, and thank you for spending some time with us this morning. But if you're kind of curious maybe on how Stamped layers into Klaviyo, or adding a loyalty program to kind of build out that full roster that Jeremiah just talked about, we'd love to talk to you about that, give you a demo of the product. You can reach us at sales@stamped.io. And I know Tila just mentioned we'll share all those links in the follow-up email here too. We've got a team of folks who are here to help you get set up. Depending on the plan you're on, we have success folks that can help you further optimize that Stamped experience from both the reviews and loyalty standpoint, and kind of build that strategy with you. And I've got some sales folks who are happy to kind of, put some ideas on the wall, kind of do some hopes and dreams kind of conversations about what you want to do with your store, your business goals with that, and kind of figure that out and build a plan. So yeah, I guess really just want to say thank you, Jeremiah, for everything that you've shown us today, and I really appreciate the chat that we've been able to have. And thank you everyone for coming and sharing some time with us. I know it's a big ask, and we're all busy as we swing into the new year here and get set up. But it means a lot to us that you would choose to spend an hour with us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.